children can't read. They're so low. What am I going to do? They don't know anything. I have my coffee here and I'm ready to get started. So I taught first grade. I've taught second grade. I did long-term sub position in 5th grade. So I am an educator. I am a teacher, true and through. Elementary school is my thing. It's my jam. And most recently, I was a literacy coach. So I like to describe it as teaching teachers for elementary school teachers. So K through 5th grade. Now, as a literacy coach, when I would go into classrooms, K through 5, generally, they all looked like a first grade classroom. And what do I mean by that? The skills that they were working on resembled a first grade classroom. In first grade is typically where the bulk of reading instruction occurs. Yes, kindergarten as well, but there's a lot of growth that happens in first grade. Now you're wondering, why does a 5th grade classroom look like a first grade classroom? Or why does a 4th grade classroom look like a first grade classroom? Good question. If you didn't know already, only about 1 in 3 American children are proficient readers by the time they reach 4th grade. And statistics have shown us that 75% of children who leave 4th grade or leave 3rd grade, as non-proficient readers do not reach proficiency in future grades. Basically what this means is if they don't get it by the time they enter 4th grade, it is very challenging for them to get it in later grades. Now, some people, whether they are educators or researchers, like to go back to the pandemic and say, this is when all of our literacy problems and this literacy crisis occurred. It did not. The pandemic, in my opinion, definitely amplified it, but we've been having these problems for quite some time now. And I don't want to negate what happened during the pandemic because it did have an impact on our educational system, yes. But there are other issues at play besides the pandemic. One, of course, issues of equity. We know in America our schools are based on the community that they are in, so largely based on property taxes. We know how that plays out. So yes, the pandemic, yes, there are equity issues, but I want to talk a little bit about pedagogy. And pedagogy is the method and practices to teach that teachers use in the classroom. What happened there? For the past few decades, the world of education has taken on a balanced literacy approach. And what that means is that it assumes children will acquire reading through exposure and repetition. Okay? Not necessarily explicit phonics instruction. What does that mean? It means that through exposure, we assumed, and I'm going to say we assumed that children will acquire reading. The problem with that is that reading is not natural. It is not. Communication is natural, but reading is not natural. And there needs to be explicit and a systematic way to teach reading. So that generally, of course, these are general statements, generally that was not happening in education. And just to highlight this point a little bit more, I'm going to put up Nancy Young's ladder of reading, which basically shows the percentage of children that need explicit instruction in order to gain this skill of reading. On the safe side, we can say that that's about 50% of students. So we're looking at the bottom 2 tiers. But generally, if we're adding in that 3rd tier, it's about 90% of students. All students. So reading doesn't just magically happen. You have to explicitly teach it. Now, that brings me to the next approach to teaching reading. That is structured literacy backed by the science of reading. Sometimes you might hear these two phrases used interchangeably. They're not really the same thing, but around the same idea or concept. Now, with the structured literacy approach, there is a focus on explicitly building those foundational skills. So working on letters and sounds, working on blending, working on segmenting and decoding using decodable readers. And research has shown, because like we said, reading is not natural, that this approach leads to building fluent readers. What I don't want to do is pin these two approaches against each other because there are criticisms on both sides. However, I do kind of want to highlight how we got into the situation that we're in right now and some possible ways that we can turn this around. My focus and my passion is really helping to build those foundational skills, whether I'm working directly with children or I'm working with educators and school leaders, because something happens between 3rd and 4th grade. 3rd grade is typically the last year where you are learning how to read. Letters and sounds, blending, segmenting, like we talked about before, critical thinking, reading comprehension, writing skills. Typically, 3rd grade is the last year when that happens. Once you transition into 4th grade, you are now reading to learn. So in the curriculum, it is assumed that you already have a strong foundation, that you already know how to read and you already have those foundational skills. Now, when you don't have those foundational skills, it's hard to grasp and understand concepts when you don't know what you're reading. To add to that, upper elementary teachers, so 4th and 5th grade and beyond, so middle school and high school, those teachers are not trained to teach foundational skills. So when they have children, whether it's one child or half their class, or I see even majority of the class, who are missing those foundational skills, they don't know what to do. And it's not their fault either. They were not trained to teach foundational skills because the way the system is set up, by the time children get to those upper elementary grades, 4th and 5th grade and beyond, they should have these skills already. But typically, what I've seen in the schools that I've worked with, our children do not. And then what happens, we get statistics that say children who are not reading proficiently after 3rd grade do not reach proficiency in later grades because the system is not set up that way. Now, I'm not saying it's impossible, but it is very, very challenging. First and foremost, we need to have an asset-based approach. This challenge that we're facing is so layered that it's going to take a layered approach to fix or correct. So on the individual level, we really need to be thinking about what our children can do. They are geniuses in their own right, and we can pull from those skills that they do have to help them learn the skills that they are missing. Our children are capable of so much more than we give them credit for, and they really need our support and our expertise, our professionalism, our love, our care to help them get to the next level. And we can do this. So yes, we have a literacy crisis. Yes, it is a layered problem and it's going to take a lot of work. And yes, there are things that we can do as educators, as aunties, as cousins, as parents to help the children that are in your life become fluent readers by the end of 3rd grade. So I'm going to stop this video right here, but I do want you to let me know in the comments down below your experiences around reading proficiency. Maybe they're your personal experiences, maybe they're experiences of your child, or maybe you're an educator and you have some classroom experiences. I would love to hear them. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.